Cone isn't here, but I expect her to be here any moment. Just a word on meeting logistics. If you're joining remotely, please change your name on your display so that it shows your first and last name. And I will try to be more diligent about asking everyone to state their name when they step up to address the council, because I heard some, I wasn't on top of that fully last time, and I think everyone's entitled to know who's speaking. Anyone who's going to address the council, either for general business or appearances or otherwise, we would, you're not entitled to speak until you're recognized by the chair. And then we ask your comments to be limited to 2 minutes, and Councillor Bate will be assisting us with timekeeping. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. We have one change, right? And that is item 10, Arts Commission presentation will not be taking place tonight. We'll reschedule that for a subsequent meeting. Any other? We'll do that when we get to the consent agenda. Anyone aware of any other changes to the agenda? If not, we can proceed to general business and appearances. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on any topic that is not on tonight's agenda. And again, please identify yourself and keep your comments to 2 minutes. Yes, sir.
A microphone, these things I stink. Anyways, good evening. I'm Maurice Martineau, 6 Scribner Street. I'm just stopping in again to ask in terms of hunting on the land up at the old Elks property, as turkey hunting starts May 1st, and deer hunting obviously in the fall. However, what I wanted to make people aware of, I mean, just in Sabin's pasture, I counted 23 deer. They're going to wreak havoc on flowers, everything, anything that grows as it does. So I just wanted to put my 2 bits worth into, again, being allowed to hunt on the property up there.
Okay, thank you. And have you been participating in the planning process and responding to the surveys?
I've not received anything in my email anyways.
Okay.
I haven't been asked to participate. It was mentioned to me before. I said I was available, but no one's contacted me.
It's all on the city's webpage. And so if you want to be heard on the planning process for Country Club Road property, that's where you go. Thank you. Stephen.
Steve Whitaker, Montpelier. It all being on the city's website is a lame excuse. That's not outreach. I want to point out that there's not a complete packet for the last 3 meetings. We can't manage to print a legible copy of the agenda materials. They're chopped off where you can't read the complete sentences. And I've showed them to the assistant city manager on the last several occasions, presuming it would get corrected, but still again tonight, you can't read the chopped off portions of the packet. So you don't have a complete packet available for the public. The dust, I got a little excited a week ago. I saw people actually with brooms sweeping the sidewalks, and lo and behold, they sweep it right into the tight corners of where the street sweeper can't reach. So the depth of the inches in some places, the depth of the sand that's blowing through the streets, causing a whole lot of people respiratory distress, I can't make excuses for those folks. You know, it's, you know, we can get away with knocking down light post after light post, but sweeping the streets to where the street sweeper won't pick it up. But it's just really the level of services that we're paying for, and that y'all are not policing to make sure we're getting our money's worth. is really absurd. I'm not going to stick around for lack of confidence in your process for the homelessness stuff, but I was made aware that they were told in no uncertain terms there wasn't going to be a shelter in Montpelier, and they left that out of the report. So the thumb or the sandbag on the scale, the corruptness of this city just defies oh, one more thing. I saw a meeting warning. You need to direct your staff or your appointees that even after Donna Bates' term lapsed the day before town meeting, she's still pretending to call a meeting for CVPSA for tomorrow night to try to wrap up, you know, to complete the death spell that now that she tried to enforce. While it's in litigation, you cannot close the CVPSA while the liabilities are still open. It's still in litigation. You need to direct Justin as your other delegate to not attend, not pretend to attend a false meeting not legally called by an ex-chair. She's term limited. She can't be back on. I just don't know why y'all don't pay attention to this stuff.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room who is seeking to be recognized? And is there anyone online who is seeking to be recognized? I am not seeing any hands up. Okay, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Sorry? Now there's a request to remove certain items from the consent agenda. Okay,
I'd ask to remove the items for the Perry Street Main Street intersection for conversation on the regular agenda, and also just the Grout Road Bridge, just to take that off the consent agenda.
okay,
Thanks.
okay. Great. The chair would entertain a motion with regard to the rest of the consent agenda.
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye,
Aye.
and all those opposed. The consent agenda is passed with the exception of items D and G. I crossed over D and G. Okay.
Yep.
Aye. Oh,
Yeah.
yep, you're right. You see, I crossed it out. So I can't read it. Okay. So Kelly, do you have something you can tell us about either of these?
But we've got the DPW Public Works Director here to comment on these items and give you a briefing.
Great.
Oh. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay. Kurt Monica, DPW Director, is going to brief you on these items.
Hi, Kurt.
So yeah, start with the very main intersection. There was a study done several years ago on the intersection. People probably know that there are times where it's difficult to turn out of Berry Street onto Main Street. So out of that scoping study, options were evaluated, a roundabout or a signalized intersection, and it was the signalized intersection that was selected. The city bonded $500,000 for the improvements, which includes the engineering work. The item for approval tonight is the engineering, the full design of the intersection, which includes coordination with the other two traffic lights adjacent, the one at Memorial and Main and at State and Main. And it also includes a preemptive ability for the rail crossing that's in that intersection. So if the rail is coming through, those lights would go red to keep people from getting on the tracks. So I'm not sure if you had specific questions, but this is specifically for getting that design work done. We're planning on going to construction next summer.
Yeah, I think because I wasn't along for the earlier conversations, you answered one, which is what's the total budget for the project? So this $94,000 approval is the first step.
That's right. The rule of thumb historically has been $250,000 roughly for intersection construction. This one's a little more complicated because of the rail and everything, and costs have gone up a bit in the last couple of years due to inflation and material pricing. But we're fairly, comfortable that we'll be within budget for this.
And then the only thought is just in terms of our priorities, in terms of public works, is this really the next project?
It's one of many. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot of projects ongoing for this summer and next year.
Okay,
But yeah, it was identified as a high priority due to traffic issues there.
all right, thanks.
And we spent a lot of time in public meetings to look at the different possibilities for how to make that intersection work. And is it the only failed intersection in the city? Is it a failed intersection by state standards?
You want to speak to that? I don't know that it's classified as failed, but as a low level of service, so it's not functioning great.
Donna?
Well, at the time, Ashley Hill was on the city council when we first started talking about this, and she commuted regularly through Berry Street and complained about how long she waited. Pedestrians especially have complained about it. And we did a lot of public outreach. And one of the town meetings, we had a map out there with the consultants and had kids as well as adults pinpoint what were the biggest issues for walking. And wow, Berry Street, drivers don't feel safe with pedestrians. Pedestrians don't feel safe with cars, and then we have bicycles in there. And so that's the other part, is that shared path connecting with both sides of Main Street. I was all for a roundabout and got, I lost the argument because one, the railroad didn't allow it, but also the expense, because you really need roundabouts on both sides of it. And so I would like you to expand though on the light, because it's more than just time. It's a very sensitive light system we're putting in. Yes.
Right. That's the part where the coordination comes in.
Yeah.
Sometimes called adaptive technology, where basically it expedites traffic flow by sort of recognizing the traffic coming from the nearby intersection and changing its timing in order to facilitate improved traffic flow. But like Donna said, yeah, it is also a pedestrian concern, so there will be a push button, pedestrian crossing there, much like the main and state intersection as well.
And Route Road now.
Yep, so Grout Road is a road out towards the end of Elm Street. Services a small number of houses, but we've been working on this project for several years. One of the homes there has a failed well, and they're unable to drill a new well because the bridge isn't structurally sound enough to get a drill rig across it. We have a structures grant from the state of Vermont for $175,000 that we've had that for 2 years. As we work through design on this project, it expires at the end of this calendar year. So if we don't move forward, we jeopardize losing that grant money. The project did come in over the engineer's estimate. We hired a consultant to do the design and the estimate for us. The balance, the gap is about 120,000. And we plan to pay for that, and working with the finance department. We were able to determine that the money for the appraisal was booked both in the general fund and in the capital plan. And that's $129,000. So the plan is to utilize that funding in the capital fund, that budgeted amount in the capital fund, to close the gap. So I think it was mostly a financial question. We had 2 bids. They were both very close, within like $30,000. So we don't feel like the contractor's bids are out of scale because they were so close to each other. So it's just the cost of construction has really drastically gone up, and in a very short time, faster than we've seen, that I've ever seen, really. Is there any other further questions on that?
You answered it. Thank you.
I have a question. I wasn't participating at all in when this first came up. It's been around for a while. And I don't want to take up a lot of time on it, but because it was at the top of the agenda and because I'm sort of new at this, I spent a little more time looking at it than I probably should have. And I just had some questions about it because even though the bids are close, they're unusual. The lowest bid is $120,000 over the other bid on 4 items. And so it just makes me wonder, and some of them are commodities like steel and concrete, really. So I understand there's pricing differences. I participated in bids, not on commercial work, but I understand that there's differences. And I read the bid analysis, and I understand that people try to balance their bid, they front load, they do a lot of things to adjust. But it's such a large difference, and the market is so volatile. I wonder if there's a contractual solution, like a cost plus with a guaranteed maximum instead of a fixed price. I mean, we know there are contingencies in there. And if they don't arise, we might save, well, the winning bidder was $100,000 high on 3 items. So he had to make that up. And then the additional 20,000 that he's under the other guy. So I understand where that might come from, but a different structure in the contract might keep the contractor happy and save us money. Is it possible to do? Have we ever done anything like that? It's not an uncommon contract in commercial work.
Yeah, I've only done one guaranteed maximum price contract. That was for the wastewater plant, the phase 1 project that we just completed. It's really kind of too late to do it on this project. We did sit down with the contractor and looked at items that we could remove. So this was bid as like a what we call a unit price contract.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yep. So and it's the V-Trans model. So the state of Vermont kind of has this model of the spec book, and that's what the engineer followed. So they outline those specific bid items based on state specifications. So we did go through, when we met with a contractor, we opened bids, when we looked at items that could be removed from the contract, and they did offer up, I think it was $30,000+ of savings to the city of items that we could remove. But as far as renegotiating a guaranteed contract, I don't think you can, one, we don't really have the time. The contractor, they have there's a lot of other work out there.
Yeah.
So we don't really have time to rebid it, but that would really change the entire contract with the contractor. So I think you'd have to do that
It would
initially.
change the
upfront.
terms of the bid.
Yeah,
Certainly.
it really would. So it's kind of a drastic change. I don't think we could do that at this point, but it is a good model for certain types of contracts.
Yeah. Just one other question. The temporary bridge was a big difference in price. I think it was, I'm not sure exactly, $56,000 difference in a temporary bridge. Is there an explanation for that? That makes sense?
Yeah, well, if you look at the engineer's estimate compared to the bid prices from both contractors, that
Oh,
was
yeah, no,
the
it was-
biggest difference for
Yeah,
sure.
he bid 50 and they bid 236
Yeah.
and 190 something or 180
Right.
something.
Right. So the engineer estimated 50,000 and the bids came in closer to 200,000.
Yeah.
So that was by far the biggest difference.
Yeah.
That is the bulk of the gap between what we have for funding allocated and the bid prices that came in. So we did think about taking that item out, but it adds a lot of challenges to construction, and that they were planning to use the temporary bridge to move equipment back and forth. They would have, basically lock up an excavator on one side of the bridge and not be
Sure.
able to use it. And in addition to that, the homes would be out of their houses, no access for 90 days, which really seemed excessive, for
Yeah.
the 3 houses. So we tried to make that work, but it just didn't seem like a viable option. I think the engineer just really underestimated that item. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, it sounds like things have changed in the temporary bridge business. Good. I didn't expect that you'd be able to make many of these changes, but if prices continue to be this volatile on projects, we might consider an alternative, or at least offering that as an option.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Is there a motion to approve those 2 items?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And items B and I from the consent agenda are approved outside of the consent agenda. Okay, next up, we have, oh, yes.
I have a procedural. The projector, the screen is showing just individual names. Can we have the audience see the same grouping that we see? Is that possible?
I think we'll see. We'll try to work on that.
Okay, thank you.
There must be a way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, we have a set of appointments. Items 6, 7, and 8 are appointments on to the Art Commission, the MEAC Energy Advisory Committee, and the Tree Board. And I see a number of people in the room for those. So I suggest we recognize anyone who's here for any of these items, have them address the council, and then we go from there. So let's see.
Good evening, I'm John Still, expired board member.
Never.
I'm not sure how it happened, but I would love to continue to be on the tree board. I've been on it since the beginning. And still have a few more years in me before I actually expire. And unfortunately, I am the chair of the tree board, and somehow it escaped me that every last one of us was an expired term. So we'll work on that one next time. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Good evening. My name is John Akulashik. I'm also an expired member of the tree board, and I'm looking for a reappointment because I enjoy doing the work. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I don't know, is there anyone here in the room from for any of the other boards, or anyone online wanting to speak who's applied for any of the other boards?
Sure. Hi, this is Julia Leopold, and I'm applying for appointment for the Montpelier Energy Advisory Committee.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
And it looks like nobody else is here. So council, what's your pleasure? This is a matter that can be taken up in executive session, but it's not mandatory. But the court, we would entertain a motion.
If I'm reading it right, every one of these have room for all of these people to be appointed, so there's no space issues that
Yep.
we're wrestling with. I would move, can I just move the slate, or should I read everyone else?
Sure.
I would move the slate of appointees to the Public Arts Commission, the Energy Advisory Committee, and the Tree Board.
Second.
Is there any, and is that enough for you, John, for the minutes? Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Yes, Don.
I just want the new members of the council to know that John and John have been our heroes as far as our elm trees. Got us out in front of it and have handled it. It's just been marvelous. Thank you,
Ash.
gentlemen. Ash tree.
Yep.
Well, I got your attention.
Okay, next item on the agenda is fireworks. We have a presentation from a member of the community, and then we can have a discussion about what, if anything, the council wants to do about it. Is that you?
My name is Karen Henry from Montpelier. I did submit packets to everybody. I hope you had the chance to review them, because I met you guys before and sort of gave you a summation. So I was just hoping you had a chance to review the environmental impact, the impact on human life, animal life. And if there's anything you want to ask me, or I'm not really sure how these proceedings go once I've submitted the information that I wanted you to have. So you just tell me what to do, or just sit down and listen, or I don't know how this works. Thank you.
Well, if there's anything you want us to hear, would be the time to do
I
it.
think the packets are pretty comprehensive. I didn't include all the stories of the emails I had gotten from people in the community who had animals killed because they had tried to escape, from the noise. Several emails from veterans with PTSD who suffered through those evenings and thought they were the only ones. A lot of responses from the community really saying it's time to look at this and revisit this practice.
If I could.
Yeah.
Is it the 4th of July celebration specifically that you're
It's
talking about?
fireworks.
Fireworks.
Fireworks, yeah,
period.
not the celebration, of course not. I mean, we all want to celebrate, but it's the fireworks specifically that are problematic.
I mean, fireworks, unpermitted fireworks are illegal, I think, in Vermont and in the city.
I don't really know.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the shows that Montpelier
The
funds.
permitted
Yes, yes.
fireworks. Mhm. And do the conditions that you described in the materials you submitted, do they also occur in the, I mean, certainly in my neighborhood, there's a lot of illegal fireworks happening. Is it the same?
I think the impact is
Problem, or is
probably
it-
different. If you look at the displays like from National Life, that's pretty significant versus someone that sets off a mat of firecrackers on Loomis Street. You know what I mean? The impact is different. I mean, but it's the big shows with the smoke and the chemicals in the smoke, the heavy metals in the smoke, the overbearing explosive sounds. Fireworks are kind of annoying, but they're not as overwhelming as a show that overshadows the entire town. I think the impact is not lovely with the mat of fireworks, but it's not the same as the massive shows that we have used twice a year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there is there a motion to take action? We could, if we wanted to, initiate a ordinance adoption process, but that, of course, for its public hearings and all that, so it's a matter of, is there a motion to do that?
There is such a thing as a quiet firework. It's not actually silent, but it's been adopted by other municipalities in the US and actually around the world. I wonder if we might try that. It changes the profile, the sound certainly. I'm not sure what it does for the other issues, but it might be worth a try.
Palin?
We might try laser light show too, instead of like fireworks. It might be another option. I don't know the budget. Do you have the budget for that?
Well, we're having discussion with
Yeah.
with the council
So-
level right now. I'll
Yeah.
just point out that the fireworks are not something the city does. The fireworks are something that Montpelier Alive does for the Independence Day celebration. And so these are certainly discussions that could go to Montpelier Alive.
So I'm on their board. So if you want me bring this discussion back, well, I could, or if there's another way of doing this, you can always, the city council can advise me, but I am on their board, so.
The contacts, people that have contacted me the last day or two since this has come up, all nicely indicated that they like the fireworks. It's a couple times a year and not every year. There were no New Year's fireworks this year. I think National Life does it for their Do Good Fest on occasion, and the Mountaineers do some ball games. And that's my understanding of the scale of what happens in Montpelier. So I like them. I'm inclined to leave it as it is.
Yeah, having two teenage kids who are very, very concerned about environment and other living beings. I prefer not having them. But of course, it's, as you said, it's a, maybe it's a public discussion matter.
Okay,
Can we simply recommend to the folks who spot, I mean, if it's not a city function, what are we able to do? Are we able to recommend to the folks who do sponsor and plan the displays that they consider an alternative?
you could make a motion if you wanted to, and see if there's support for it, or any member can contact them directly and say, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Yes, Laura.
Well, I do wonder if a next step could be having Pellin talk with Montpelier Alive and just see, like, bring these issues to their attention, see if there's interest in alternatives, if we could avoid a whole ordinance process, knowing that, as Tim said, it's really not very many people who are like putting on big firework displays. So if we could have some conversations, we might be able to see, there's the quieter ones, like, are there environmentally more friendly ones? Are there alternatives altogether? So I think maybe that option would be my preference, is have some conversations first.
Does that require a motion?
Carrie, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry,
Mr.
Pellin.
Mayor, can Montpelier Alive Board invite? Can we invite her to our
Sure.
meetings? Okay,
She's asking if
Okay.
the Montpelier Alive Board could invite you to one of their meetings, and the answer is
Yeah.
clearly yes.
yeah, so yeah, again, I don't know what will happen, but I just want to bring you and them together, then it will be a better discussion. Only me, like, trying to explain what I understood from your document. It will be better if you were there and just, explain everything. It will be better communication.
Yeah, whatever the Montpelier Alive Board
Yeah.
wants to do,
Yeah,
it's totally
exactly, yeah.
fine. Carrie.
Yeah, I've also heard just from a couple of people directly about this who expressed that they would like to keep the fireworks, that they enjoy the fireworks. And so I just want to, it doesn't sound like we're talking about taking a vote, but I want to be clear that the city council is not directing Montpelier Alive to do anything in particular. But that we're, the idea has come up that perhaps you could speak with Montpelier Alive, who does many of the fireworks shows, and talk to them about alternatives. There will be other fireworks shows that happen in town. So that wouldn't cover everything, but that could be a good place to start. Yeah. Oh, good.
I think there are different people now.
Yeah, different executive director. All right, not hearing a motion. So I think we move to the next item on the agenda, which is the follow-up on the homelessness report. Kelly, we're turning this over to you.
Want to speak? People have hands raised.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. We can,
People have hands raised that want to speak about the issue.
okay, I wasn't seeing your hand, sorry. Peter Kelman.
Yes, Peter Kelman. I live on Mountain View Street, very close to National Life. I thoroughly support Karen Hanron's asking for the city and the various organizations that are doing this to consider alternatives. I don't think a few people saying that they like fireworks, even if one of them is Tim Heaney, constitutes a reason for keeping them. Karen has provided a very persuasive case, and even leaving aside the pets for the moment, we have veterans who have PTSD who are severely and adversely affected by this. I think that consideration should trump, excuse the expression, that our kids like fireworks. Also, the people who like fireworks ought to have a chance to see some alternatives. Laser shows and low impact shows, they've never seen them. So saying, I like fireworks, and saying, well, yeah, I like milk in the morning, or I like to have my coffee in the morning. What are the alternatives? I think we should really provide some alternatives, and then ask people, hey, what did you think about that compared to the fireworks? I'm kind of disturbed by the tenor of this conversation. I think that if you don't want to make a decision as about an ordinance, because I agree ordinances are a pain in the neck, I think there ought to be a very clear discussion with all your organizations, with the Mountaineers, with National Life, with Montpelier Alive, and maybe even form a little, working committee to look at alternatives. And I think the city council should say, we want to look at alternatives. We want to see whether that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Katie Trouts.
Hi, yeah, thanks. So I think
Could you-
that it's a strong,
Katie.
oh,
would you-
hello?
Would you identify yourself?
Oh, I'm Katie Trouts with Montpelier Alive, the executive director, new executive director. I appreciate people bringing up the concerns about fireworks. I, on one hand, completely agree. I do just want to mention that we have looked into alternatives. And I don't think people understand, fireworks cost $12,500 for one single event, which we have managed to afford as Montpelier Alive. We looked into a drone laser light show as an alternative, and it cost over $45,000 for a single light show. It's not something that you can like keep the drones and do it again and again. And so we are looking into alternatives. They seem really unaffordable. There might be ways that we can work on finding funding, but I just want everyone to be aware of that we're looking into it. And it seems like, at least for the next year, kind of impossible. We also have to plan our fireworks about, I don't know, 8 to 12 months in advance to reserve them. So if there is a consideration of a ban, I just want to make sure people know that this July 3rd, we've already paid a deposit on. And like I said, that's $12,500 for a single show. So I just wanted to provide that information and make sure people know that we're looking into alternatives. And our single show a year is very popular, and maybe we can just do that. But we are keeping the concerns in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Katie, do you have any knowledge or opinion on the financial impact if we were to not allow the fireworks to be held on the evening of July 3rd?
In terms of the downtown and how that would affect our crowds, or in terms of our deposit?
Yeah, no, exactly. Just as an ongoing thing, it seems to me that the fireworks are what keeps the crowds down on on the State House lawn right up until the fireworks display.
Yeah, our event annually, and we did some research on this and hired a company to try to investigate how many people come to our event. There are over 10,000 people annually who come to July 3rd. And you can imagine how that's an economic driver to the downtown. That's the parade and fireworks show together. I strongly feel that there should be some sort of show that could continue those crowds coming to gather on the State House lawn. It may not be fireworks, but like I said, there's a cost to that.
Thanks, Katie. Linda Berger.
I just had a quick question. Is Montpelier Alive received some funding from the city, correct?
Yes.
I appreciate Katie's presentation about the thoughtfulness that's going into this by that group. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, folks. One more hand. Sorry. Oh, you're just using Audrey Famet.
This might sound like a silly question, but is there any way to have fireworks with just the color and not the really loud sound? Because, being a former special educator, we had kids coming from Bosnia who, experienced, like the horrible, bombing and loud sounds. And I think it was addressed the PTSD. These were the things that really affected people, and it affects, wildlife and pets are these hugely loud sounds. So it might be a silly question, but can we have just color and which people really like without the really loud sound? Just a question.
Apparently there are some that are not as loud. So I think that's going to be that could be something that Montpelier Live looks into. Yes, Palin.
So since Kate is here, then she will follow up, right?
Well, you can talk to Kate.
Yeah, yeah.
You're-
I've
as your
always,
member of
I'm
her
trying
board.
to understand if I
Yeah.
have to do anything afterwards, or since she's here and she heard everything and she responded. So that's her responsibility to follow up.
It's nobody's responsibility to
Okay.
follow up unless, the council isn't telling anybody to do anything.
Okay, okay, got it. Thank you. Just check.
Right. Okay, I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone who has their hands up, and I'm not seeing anyone. Thanks for coming. Okay, next up, homelessness report follow-up.
Great. So in your packets, you received staff recommendations from the Parker Advisor's presentation at the last meeting. Excuse me. And so the next step is really to take a look at that and determine what you would like to do. So there are 3 areas that were made for recommendation within the report. They include the housing plan, the hub shelter, and the education outreach plan. And so staff has provided individual recommendations for each of those items in the memo. And so we can take them one by one, or we can have a general discussion, whatever your pleasure is. But ultimately, I think what it boils down to, just in a quick summary, is determining what the city's role will be and how you would like to direct staff to proceed next.
Why don't you give us kind of a high-level summary of what is in the report?
Sure.
Us and the members of the public.
Yes, can do. So from a high level, what's in the report is we'll be looking to review the housing plan. So the Planning Commission is currently working on the city plan, and Parker Advisors had recommended that some of that plan include items related to the unhoused. Next up, within those recommendations was related to a hub or a shelter, and selecting a location maybe within the city that would provide shelter, but also provide services as sort of a hub model with nonprofits and state entities providing services all in one spot. And then the last item was outreach, making sure that people know where to go to get services and what's available to them.
Not all. Okay, any questions from members of the council? So.
Could we go through them through the response item by item? There are what, 5 or 6 line items?
There's 3 generally, yes.
Yeah, and there are several in the response that Bill Frazier sent us. There are several subsets.
We can do that.
Okay, great. So the under the housing plan, there are 2 critical recommendations made by Parker Advisors. One on the creation of more subsidized housing, and one on removing barriers to subsidized housing, so that in the future, fewer people are become housing vulnerable. And I just wonder if we need to, I just wanted to make sure that those 2 elements, which I think are in fact critical are part of the housing plan that is ongoing, as I understand it. And I mean, it became more important just in the last week or so, because I noticed that the Isabel Circle project has completely changed. I mean, it was originally billed as a kind of a planned development with that would fill the missing middle, so-called, with cottages, I think 50 or 56, 54 cottages. And now it really looks like a sort of standard subdivision with 30 lots that are going to be sold to people who can afford to buy them and afford to build on them. And while we need that in Montpelier, we also need housing that that is somehow subsidized, and not just for the first buyer, but for subsequent buyers. And we didn't have any control at Isabel, but we do at Country Club Road, which is not specifically under discussion here, but it's, you know, it's obviously in line for some decisions about housing. So it seems important that that we make that recommendation, that subsidized housing be considered as part of the plan, along with, you know, the variety and the types of housing and sizing and so on.
Are you talking in the master plan style? Or what is that? Plan are you
I
talking-
guess I think I am. I mean, I think that's what's being revisited is the housing element of the city plan.
Well, I think the entire master plan's in the works to be
That's correct.
redone.
And Kelly, do you know the timeline?
I don't, but I can find out.
I know.
I just think I want to remind Tim, the master plan has changed language to city plan.
Okay,
I want to revert to master plan
yeah.
too, but city plan is the master plan, just so you know.
but that is the plan we're talking about
Yes,
modifying.
yes.
That is the plan we're talking about. It's in the development process within the planning commission. Right, and it's been going on for a couple of years now. So I think they're planning on bringing it to the council this year sometime.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Jack.
Not an immense.
Well, these are the same wonderful 3 points that they presented first time. I'm still looking at people like Tim and others, is where there's a property. I don't think we can assume another way taking on this burden. Or that Sam, Good Samaritan, will have it. The churches are having so much problem. They're backing off. I would really like us to find a property we can zoom in on. I mean, if we could find a property owner that will meet the city and become a partner with it. I keep looking at that yellow house on Main Street, the old funeral home, and say, oh, it would just be, that would be great. How do we make that happen? Do we start knocking at all these property owners? We go through the city's list. Help me, Tim, as a realtor or anyone else. I want to initiate a beginning with real property and put something in place. We can't wait for the property, Country Club property. We need to do something now about this hub, especially.
If I might, so the council should be getting the city plan in the summer or fall.
Okay.
And then there's a process of us holding public hearings before we adopt it. Carrie.
Yeah, the housing committee has seen some preliminary drafts of the housing portion of the city plan. And so they've got a lot of work to do, but I feel that these concerns that Sal has brought up are being taken seriously in this planning process.
So one of my questions was about the public input process, and it sounds like there will be one at some point, maybe closer to the middle than the end, but I haven't written off the rec center myself, which was the recommendation of the Parker advisors. I know in Bill Frazier's response, he talks about undertaking another architectural study. I mean, we've done 3 architectural studies since 2016. As I understand, I don't know who's looking at the building now, but I think somebody's reviewing the asbestos content. Not sure who. So that's really 4 reviews of the building. I think we know what's wrong with the building. And the fact is we have to mitigate that building, whether we tear it down or leave it vacant or use it. So, you know, we're not throwing that money away if we mitigate it. And then the plan that that Parker advisors came up with didn't even require complete mitigation. So I think, I mean, I'm not ready to write off the rec center. I mean, I think it's built like a tank. It has some problems that need to be solved, accessibility being one of them, mitigation of hazardous materials being another. But we're also going to be, there's the challenge of dual use over the next few years, but it's going to be a few years, probably 3 to 5 years before there's a new rec center, if there is.
Right.
So I think we have a good location. We just need to take some action on it.
Donna.
Set aside $425,000. And if I could see, we've already spent some of that on consultant. I don't know if we're closer to $399 at this point that we could spend on either the hub with services, or I'll bet you the main 55 Berry Street is going to be a lot more than $500,000. The mitigation of asphalt,
Asbestos. Yeah.
asbestos is just immensely expensive. So that's my bind, is not that that building's not there, but now that we've discovered it's worse than we thought, to put the money there and not do anything that's immediate that could be like the hub, then that's my priority.
Yeah, I agree with Donna and Sal. I think that the rec still needs to be on the table and considered for this, for the consultants. And it's just something we've got to, it's an asset we have. We need to look at it, study it, and know what we can do with it. And there, I can come up with another handful of properties around town that we could also approach. And the $400,000 line like these in our businesses, that's a good down payment. But yeah, it's not going to be enough to do the whole thing. But I don't know that Montpelier has to be picking up the whole tab on this either. And that's part of the discussion, is what's our role in this process? And it seems the state should be involved. This is a bigger issue than just Montpelier. But we need to get going on these properties and looking at the options for this next year. Is the homeless task force, is that something they're doing, or is that?
I think we should set up a committee, and you should be chair and
Another
really
committee?
go after
Another
property.
Yeah.
A short-term committee, to
Or-
really
Well, we've got
focus.
the homeless task
on-
force. I mean, it would seem like it must be right up there.
Lauren, you
think
had your
Yeah,
hand up.
Just thought.
I mean, mostly just echoing, I mean, my priority is that we are locking something in as a city that we're not, like, I think we should have the rec center on the table. I think we should be looking for plan Bs in case that, like, the timeline for the whatever construction needs to happen or whatever doesn't match up with this winter. But I don't want to be in the position where we're coming up with a partnership yet again, that then next year we have to renegotiate a new partnership. Like, I want to be looking for a long-term solution, or something that at least is like a medium-term solution that's getting us to a long-term solution that is not like, because every year we have this conversation like, oh no, there's a crisis again, that the churches and like part of going, to some private landowners, it concerns me a little that we're getting back into that of like finding a new partner that then will do it, find it's hard and not want to do it again. And so I really want the city to be committing to just finding something that's a multi-year at least kind of prospect.
Ellen.
I am serving on homeless task force as the city.
You probably need to have that mic closer to you.
Okay, I
There we
will try again. Project my voice. So I am serving on homelessness task force as a city council representative, and Carol I think I'm right, Sal, the name? Yeah. So they have some alternative plans. So if you want to see them, we can share. She shared like a 2-page ideas with us. We can share it with you, and you, because they already told about this, what we can do with the rec building, and they have some ideas using the funds, just create some kind of short-term solutions, because Tim was asking about the task force. That's why I just want to explain. So they have some ideas, and we have to bring them to the discussion.
And will that be ready to make a presentation, say, at our next meeting?
I can ask them, and I can share the 2-page document they sent to us with the rest of the city
Great.
council.
If I might just
Yeah.
jump in really quickly here. So part of the reason for the Parker Advisory report was to kind of address some of these items. And I think what would be really helpful is to get guidance on whether or not you would like city staff to fully vet those costs. So the items that might be identified by the homelessness task force through Carolyn Ridpath may or may not be the full committee's position. It could be, but I think we would want to go from the Parker Advisory report and then sort of maybe take a look at the location itself, and maybe sort of identify those items and see what the costs would be. And we've done some of that work too, as we've been preparing for this conversation. So we're really kind of looking for, do you want to look into this issue further? And would you like us to come back to you with some of those real cost estimates, so that then, you can kind of take a look at that, sit with it, and then see where you are. With all due respect to the committee, they've done a lot of work, and Carolyn has done an excellent job of bringing things forward and really kind of advocating for that. But I also want to make sure that we are able to provide you with some details, so that then you've got, and that's why part of the memo is discussing a secondary or third party evaluation of some of the costs associated with this, because for this building, we've kind of had, piecemeal studies done for different purposes. And we just want to be sure that we've got all the items, in place, and we want to do what you would like us to do.
Yeah. Thanks, Kelly. That's why we didn't share anything with you before. So we are just offering, because the task force name was mentioned a couple times, but it is of course up to, the staff, and all the things you explain is because they have been working such a long time. And if you had a chance to attend their meeting, you will see that so many alternatives were being discussed. And I think our job as a city council representative for that committee, just mention what they are offering for us. But I understand. That's why we didn't share anything beforehand with you. So.
Next question, because the Parker study came from that committee. It was vetted through them, was it not? That's my understanding. The Parker Advisory Group worked with the committee, and
I was just appointed, so I don't know what happened before me. So I've attended one meeting, and Sal and I will reach out after that, because we are both serving on committees. So I don't know what happened before me. So maybe they did, maybe they don't know, maybe more experienced city councils or city staff can explain. Yeah,
I'd be happy to. So they did receive the report in advance of going to council. They did not ultimately endorse it, but they also did not vote to hold it in committee.
Thank you for putting your request to us so clearly, what you need from us. So I would say that I would really like the city to pursue investigating how much it would cost to implement the recommendation of building a hub/shelter at the rec center. And I think the rec center, it makes sense. I know it's going to come out to be way more expensive than anyone here probably thinks it's going to be. And that's okay. We want to know, we need to know that. But we need something to happen soon. We have people who have needs that need to be met immediately. And this seems like a way to do it. And I think that, we've also got possibilities for other recreational facilities that might take the place of the current rec center, but I would encourage us to think about not waiting for that to be the case and to look really hard at what's happening in the current rec center building and think if there are ways for some of those programs to happen elsewhere. I mean, for instance, we have 3 schools right in town that all have gyms that are not being used outside of school stuff. And believe me, I know that's a fraught, complicated issue. And yet we have these beautiful facilities that are in our city. And so, and we have people who need a place to sleep at night and need a place to shower and need a place to put their stuff and get services. So I'd like to think we could work out we could work that out somehow. And then I also, there's a question in here about what's the city's role in providing housing or helping or anything. And I know that's a big ongoing question, but I just want to kind of put a word in for the idea of it being appropriate for the city to assume some kind of public responsibility for the safety of the people who are living here, and that there are, we don't have a work farm, we don't have a poor farm, but we have prisons now, and that's pretty much what we do with people who are who can't find a place to live and can't hold down a job and don't have any family to take care of them. And I think it's worth including in the conversation our public and civic responsibility towards folks along those lines. Now, how we actually fulfill that obviously is very difficult and complicated, but we need to keep talking about it. And this, it's not part of the current report recommendations, but I also want us to think about longer term solutions for housing for people who maybe could be accommodated in housing. I think we should talk about the idea of, is there a building up at Vermont College that's for sale that could be turned into housing for people who can't find housing somewhere else? And that the city may be able to have a role to play in that. And I know that all these things are out of our reach financially at the moment, but I think if we can, we're pretty good at finding money for things that we value. And so I think we should work on it.
Sound and learn.
I agree with all of that, but I wanted to emphasize a couple of things. One, Kelly, I wanted to make sure that the cost of the mitigation was broken out according to the full mitigation of the building as well as the staged mitigation, just so we can have something to, to compare.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. And I think we would itemize items for this specific use and also probably use some of the feedback from the homelessness task force to, provide those estimates so that we can also make sure that there are, some, sort of numbers to those things that they've already done a lot of the work. And so it's just maybe, scaffolding that a little bit.
I also agree that it might make sense. I mean, I think it does make sense for the city to take some responsibility for managing this issue. I think we already provide some community services. This is, as you were saying, Lauren, this seems to come up every year. I mean, it probably needs a city department to keep the ball rolling. Right now, we're really in a situation that I consider to be an emergency. I was at the last homelessness, the task force meeting, and unless the legislature acts soon and the motels and hotels empty, the local population of unhoused people could double, or at least close to that, over the summer. And then we head into fall with what? I mean, it's April already. So yeah, we can price things and we can survey things and we can look for alternatives, but I think we have something viable across the street, and we need to act quickly because really it's like a hurricane.
Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I agree with the direction everyone's heading. I mean, I very much think, I agree with Tim. I think the federal government should be doing more. I think the state government should be doing more. I mean, one thought is, I was a little underwhelmed, but I am interested in inviting the state back and maybe our delegation to understand what is the state doing, what opportunities might there be for grant programs, for support, like what is their plan, which from the news, it seems like there is no plan, but I would want to hear that directly from them because maybe there's more going on behind the scenes than we're aware of, and how would our services fit into that, and maybe just us being an advocate, maybe there's some grant programs or something they can tell us about that we can be made aware of.
Wish that were true.
I know, but get them on the record at least saying that, no, we're dumping the responsibility onto every local community across the state to manage, which is atrocious and unconscionable. But here we are. And I think we do have a responsibility as a community to care for everyone who is living here. And so I think this path of, for me, directing city staff to look at what would the plan be for getting the rec center. I mean, I think if we get a red flag really soon that there's some huge problem we're not aware of, I mean, to me, it seems workable. But if it's like, it's going to be millions of dollars or something that we just don't have or something, I think keeping that track of plan Bs or Cs seems smart. The other piece that I think we should also be parallel, which you have in your memo, is the staffing, because that then will become the next question. And so what's the city's recommendation for, do we hire someone? Is there, it sounds like there's open questions of if Good Sam or another way are interested or able to just take on extra work to staff this. So let's start answering those like as soon as possible also, so that doesn't become the next crisis.
Well, as luck would have it, Rick DeAngelis has his hand up. So Rick.
Does that mean you're inviting me to speak?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that you touched upon that. I'm grateful for this discussion, but as it's proceeded, I'm thinking to myself, I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but you're focusing on the easiest part, the real estate. And I'm a guy that comes from a real estate background, but I've been operating shelters for the last 3 years. Now I know the most difficult part of trying to shelter people is to operate. And you can believe that challenge has increased greatly over the last 2 months. We've had we had somebody murdered last week in a shelter in Brattleboro. And we had one of our staff, in fact, my own son, who was very savagely stabbed at a warming station. So Good Sam is very interested in being part of the solution here. And we expressed that to Kelly and Bill earlier today. But it's going to have to be done in a way that we feel is safe and in a facility that we feel is an appropriate facility. And quite frankly, I mean, we want to work with the city and everybody else, but it's got to be done on our terms if we're going to be the operator. And I'll just leave you with one other thought. And again, we shared these points with Bill and Kelly earlier today. We are not interested in running the housing hub. We frankly don't think it's all that the real critical part of this. We're not convinced that providers are going to come. We're not convinced that the public is going to come, quite frankly. And we do think the most critical part is the shelter and a robust street outreach program in Montpelier and in the area. So I'll leave you with that.
That is really great to hear. Have your input on that, Rick. I appreciate that. Given what's happened in a couple of cities now, is there a clear thought, or are there ideas coalescing about what elements are necessary to provide services in a safe way?
I'll tell you, we talk about that every day. And it's really challenging because on the one hand, you want to treat people respectfully and decently and to trust them and welcome them. But on the other hand, there are some unpredictable behaviors that happen in the shelter. And so there's always this tension, how strictly are we going to control this environment? And if you get too strict, then it feels like you're running a prison or a jail or something like that. But on the other hand, maybe if you're too, open-ended about it, you may be taking some risks. And quite frankly, I would say that I think the population that has been centered in Montpelier and on the streets present the most challenging behaviors that there are. So we're interested in serving that population. We have a whole network of services and shelters. And this is the piece that we feel is that really needs to be addressed well. And we want to do that, but we have to do it in a safe way. And we can't overtax what we're already providing right now. So that's a great question, Jack, but we're going to have to keep looking at that and figuring out the best strategy that we can come up with.
And Donna has a question for you, I think,
I wanna put
and
it in
Carrie
the hot
maybe
s-
too.
Hot seat on, when you talk about having a safe place, a way to operate the program in a safe place, 55 Berry Street would be sharing it with general public of all ages. Right now, that rec building is used from all ages. Can you visualize using that space as a shelter for showers and bathrooms?
At separate times I could. So let's say that we continued, or our group continued to run it as an overflow shelter. You could only use it for the homeless population during those times. I would not want to be mixing the general public with a high needs population of people. I think that would be a mistake. There's some things I really like about that building, and there's other things that I don't. And I like the big open space. It gives you a chance to watch people carefully and to have the action right in front of you. But of course, that building needs so much that I'm concerned about that. And one last point, and I'm concerned about the money too. I mean, if we're going to have a robust staffing thing, where's that money going to come from? I think even the project at Christ Church over the winter that Another Way did, I think they're up around $200,000 and in operating costs for that. And so this can get quite frankly, we need to increase our wage rates because we're concerned that people aren't going to want to do this work. And we want to have a very robust staffing plan. So that's something that we have to throw into the equation here too. How can we figure out how to staff this appropriately and pay for that? And we're not thinking that the city has to be the entire part of that solution, but it may have to be part of it if it really wants to address it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your kind of firsthand expertise, perspective, and I feel like the voice that I'm hearing from you now is missing from the report that we received that we're responding to right now. And so that raises all kinds of questions for me as to the role that our local providers played in creating that report and the role that the Homelessness Task Force has played. So I give so much credence and respect to your input and don't want to make decisions and make plans without having that. And I'm finding myself feeling a little uncertain about how we should proceed at this point, whether we should be turning to the Homelessness Task Force for advice about this. I would have thought we would have heard that or be hearing that. It sounds like they're working on that. We may hear something, but I think I guess I'm asking for your thought about, I'm hearing a lot about the challenges and what we can't do. And I'm wondering, given that I think that the people in this room right now, the city council, are feeling very positive and very enthusiastic about trying to move forward with doing some work on the part of the city and spending some money of the cities. What's a way that we can do that fruitfully? And
May
with-
I make one more comment, and then I'm sure there are others that want to address that question. You know, I take some responsibility for that. I'm on the task force. I spoke with Paul and Dan a couple of times, and overall, I support the idea. But you know, the thinking was, let's get some ideas out there, and then who's ever operating it is going to have to refine the plan. And that was the discussion I had with Paul and Dan. And also, since we had those discussions, the landscape has changed, quite frankly. We've had two brutal, you know, events that have occurred. So we are feeling a lot more cautious than we might have when I talked to those guys earlier in the year. And so I think it would be a mistake to say, well, this isn't a good plan. You know, Rick DeAngelis just, you know, said all these things that are wrong with it. No. I think it's the right. It's important to have this level of a response, and but now we got to refine it and look at the different options and see what really works.
Thanks, Ray. Paige Girton.
Hi, I just want to say a couple of things about the rec center, which I really like the idea of using the rec center if we can. We've been doing dual use with the church for this entire winter. And it seemed, as far as the church, I know there were some issues, and there will be with the population we're talking about. But, you know, I was in cleaning the room one morning a week for the entire winter, and it was, the guests were, for the most part, fine. The place was not a mess. It was easy to take care of. We had a really good staff person on call and in there on Tuesday night, a guy named Sam, and I don't even know his last name, but he was really good with the population that was staying there. Anyway, dual use, I think, is possible. We might have to change the hours that the rec center is open a little bit, which I'm sure my grandson would be devastated about. But, you know, we could do that. And that leads to the next point, which is we've had kids playing basketball and adults playing pickleball in that building for years, asbestos and lead notwithstanding. So we could continue, we could use that building in a temporary mode. If we have a plan to remediate at some point, whether or not it actually happens or not, I don't know. But I don't see asbestos being a reason why we can't continue to use that building and possibly do it as a dual use, because it's got a big space for sheltering more people. The other thing is there are bathrooms in there, which if they were updated, maybe one added on the ground floor, it would solve part of the public bathrooms problem. And you could easily put a simple lift to the back door of the gym, and that would resolve, at least to the first floor, the access problem, which would resolve a couple of problems that are plaguing the building to begin with. And I think you could probably do all that for what's left of the allocated money. That's my plug.
Thanks, Paige. Carolyn Ridpath.
And I have to say that was Carolyn's idea.
I want to urge the council to keep it simple. Basically, what we need is an overflow shelter. So what we need is access, we need a bathroom, and we need whatever it takes to comply with the city code on the subject. So to expand it further than that, I don't think is relevant. And if we stick with the overflow shelter piece of it, then it's something that would be done hopefully every winter. So it's not creating any kind of a new activity. So again, I urge you to keep it simple. Stick with what's being proposed. That if you just do the bathrooms, you may not have to disturb any asbestos or very little, or it can be encapsulated.
Thank you, Carolyn. Peter Kelman.
Peter Kelman, Mountain View. I'm a member of the Homelessness Task Force. I was the coordinator of volunteers for the Christchurch-based shelter. I was the coordinator for the Homelessness Days of Action that took place at 3 different motels. I made about 20 pages of comments on various drafts of the Parker report. So I'd like, Jack, you to let me talk for a little more than 2 minutes. And one of the reasons is that unlike, I think some people have a mistaken idea that because the Parker associates were hired on the recommendation of the task force, that that they worked hand in glove with us. They did not. We received, despite the fact that in December, I gave them a backward planning schedule, which they ignored. We received approximately 10 days before we received the first draft that we ever saw. I spent about 24 hours of time going through that, and a couple of other people did too. There's another mistaken impression here, which is that the Homelessness Task Force is a monolith. The Homelessness Task Force consists of 11 people, 6 of whom are in the trenches working with people every day, and frankly, don't have the time to be reading reports or commenting on them. 5 of the appointees are regular citizens like myself, Carolyn, and a few others. We are the only ones who really have the time to read. I promise you that most of the members of the task force didn't even read the report. And in the discussion, as Kelly said, there was not a vote to endorse it. She said there was also not a vote to withhold it, but I got to tell you, there were a lot of questions in it, and we identified a lot of things that were not in it that should have been in it. Carolyn's proposal, which I wish you would read to you, which is what Pellin alluded to before, was developed by Carolyn. I helped her. It is not a work of the task force. If you want to go and talk, well, let's ask the task force. You're going to get approximately, well, you won't get 11 different answers, but you'll get probably about 9. So don't think that you're going to get the task force to answer any of your questions. All right. Now, let me just be clear about a few things. As a person who's been on top of this whole thing pretty much for the last 18 months. Actually, I was on the housing task force before. I was on the housing task force when the city planning process began 4 years ago. That city plan has been in the works for 4 years. And I'll tell you right now that it did not come back to the housing committee until very recently. It was not shared. The Parker Associates did not talk with the housing committee or the planning committee or the planning commission.
Peter, can we get the time check?
Back, I'm gonna wrap it up. We're incredibly siloed here, and I'll tell you that I have read every draft of the planning commission's chapter on housing, and there is almost nothing in there about the issues that the Parker report brought up. Almost nothing. There's one little thing about affordable housing. There's nothing about subsidized housing. There's the whole discussion in there of Country Club Road doesn't mention it, unless the city council directs the planning commission, the housing committee, and the homelessness task force to sit down together and work on this. That report, that chapter is not going to meet what the Parker report proposed. It's just not going to do it. Thank you,
Peter. Linda Berger.
Thank you. I'm from District 1. I take it very seriously when Rick DeAngelis says that Montpelier has the most challenging population in the area. I have to reference the plan that's going to be talked about later to continue to support Confluence Park. Where a city puts their money reflects their values. We've got people that have mental health needs, other needs, sheltered needs, and it's going to cost money to address those needs, or the whole population of Montpelier will be at risk. And I've experienced this in San Diego. San Diego has a homelessness population issue. It also has a resource issue. And it ends up being unsafe for both populations. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. So members of the council, are we in agreement that we want the city staff to proceed with the cost estimate and the rest of what we were talking about? I don't feel we need to have a motion for that. I think we can just, everyone agrees that this is what. And Donna.
I would just like to add, what Rick was talking about, mixing, when we talked about doing other things with the rec center before, and when we put the lockers near them, right behind them, there was a lot of public push, concern about mixing the age groups of different populations. I'd like some feedback from the rec center, how they feel about it. And perhaps we can even get more from Rick in detail. Thank you.
Kelly, how long do you think it will take to get those numbers?
Well, following this meeting, we can go out to contractors to get them. So it just would be, I don't know, maybe by the next meeting or maybe by meeting in May.
Well, I mean, it's an urgent need. If you could put a time constraint on it, the sooner the better. If you can do that with the people you work with. Yeah.
Helen, then Tim.
Kelly, can we also create some kind of timeline, like I'm just making this up, right? In 6 months, we can do this and the cost is like that, not like a general cost estimate, because some things are very urgent and we need some kind of time frame, right? Sure. Then we can decide, okay, in 6 months, this cost, we can do this. In a year, it costs that much, we can do that. So I think it will give a better idea for us. Thank you.
Tim.
I think if we look at the memo, item 6, which is titled "Should 55 Berry Street, the Rec Center building be considered?" The second paragraph is effectively what Carrie said. And I think it details the instructions that we want to pass through to staff. So it looks like they were recommending it makes sense in architectural evaluation, and maybe an architect would be a good person or architectural firm to give us a timeline and give their experience of what's going on in construction. Do you agree, Seth?
Well, it just depends on how far afield they go. I mean, I think the structural evaluation of the building has been done. We might consider going back to somebody like Brad Loaf or somebody who's familiar, already looked at the structural stuff with the understanding that times have changed, costs have changed, but they've already prepared cost numbers. So that,
okay.
Yeah, they might be able to do it tout de suite, as it were.
Yeah, keeping in mind that what we've looked at before was for a new rec center. It wasn't for this use. So, okay.
And that's what this specifically says, identify those issues which must be addressed in order to provide a shelter.
Donna.
Well, the part that worries me is the
Wait a minute.
architectural
Sal?
survey part.
Sal?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just that we paid them to look at it before. I don't know how much we can expect. Ask by all means, but realize unless we're going to pay money for real, we might not get the detail you're thinking of. It's all going to be ballpark numbers and ballpark timelines.
Would we have authorization to get some firmer numbers on this?
What do you mean?
Spend money.
So, yeah.
You want, and where would it come from?
We would have to work with finance to determine where that would come from.
Why don't you look into that and bring that to our next meeting? Great.
If I may, Sorry for the interruption earlier. Since there's a 90% chance, if not greater, that we'll have to mitigate that building eventually, why don't we actually ask for bids on the minimum work that Carolyn's plan would require as a first step from contractors who we can still, after we get the pricing, we can still decide not to do it, but we'll have firm pricing from contractors who are able and willing to do the work. And then we can get estimates for the rest of the structure over the following weeks, or whatever the initial time period we were thinking of would be. That would get us some firmer numbers more quickly for the portion that we're actually talking about completing in the near future.
It would, but it seems like we're getting ahead of ourselves to do that.
Do some due diligence here, get back to you with sort of what the options might be for fulfilling what's been recommended for the memo, and also kind of dovetailing some of the more immediate needs. Seeing, how much that might cost, if anything. I mean, maybe we're in kind of a bid situation where we might be able to get some information up front. We'll see.
Okay. Sounds good. Ready to move along to chapter 2 in the Kelly Show? Yeah, strategic plan, item 12. And the purpose of putting this on the agenda was to have a review of what we've adopted for our strategic plan, to get a sense of how people feel about it now and whether we want to have a deeper look at the whole thing now as opposed to in the future. Kelly?
Yes. So I am gonna give you a quick presentation. So I'm gonna just step down there. And if you'd like, I can turn down the lights on this side of things, and then we'll take it from there.
Great.
Okay, cool.
Big question. How long is her presentation? It's 8:05.
Will we be done by 8:30?
I hope so.
Your presentation will be done by 8:30 at least.
Yes, I'm not sure about the discussion. All
Yeah.
depends.
Okay. Every meeting, I'm keeping my eye on that clock, see how close we're getting to 8:30.
Okay, can everybody see this presentation here? Perfect. Okay. So as Jack provided in summary, the purpose of this presentation is to bring everybody up to speed on our strategic plan. And also just to make sure that what we've got in our plan is reflective of council goals and priorities. There are 3 options that you might take for tonight following this presentation. 1 is to affirm the current plan. 2 is to maybe affirm the plan, but with minor amendments. Or 3, to go back and review the plan in advance of the next strategic planning process, which would likely require an additional meeting, but we can certainly do that if that's your pleasure. So I'm gonna go through the presentation here, and then we'll take the discussion from there. So let's see here. Okay. ahead of myself here. Okay. Perfect. So what we're going to talk about, what the strategic plan is, why the strategic plan, talk about the cycle a little bit, and then the three really high levels of the strategic plan and why they're important: the vision, the goals, the strategies and initiatives. Just starting with the what is the strategic plan. It's the process in which the council defines the city's vision for the future and identifies the goals and objectives. And then the why is it allows for the city to prioritize new projects and to make sure that they're serving the council's vision, and to measure progress and outputs, and to provide clarity and transparency for the work that the city does. And so as you can see here from this graphic, this really kind of shows from top to bottom what the strategic plan is visually, from vision to action. And I can go through each of the items individually, but you get the gist. And so this quadrant map just kind of shows you, how we might sort of assess and address the strategic plan, and how we sort of determine what might rise to a level of priority, and how we are going to use our time. I know Bill has mentioned to you in the orientation that, we only really have 100 hours together, so we want to really make it count. And so the strategic plan is, that document. I also should mention that we recently, within this past cycle or so, have aligned the strategic plan with a budget process, so that then we can make sure that we're putting money to those priorities. And so this shows you the cycle of the strategic plan, and the elements of strategic planning. And so we go through each of these individual spheres to kind of take a look at things as we're working through the strategic plan. When we start the strategic planning process in the fall, we'll go through all of this. Maybe me leading the process, and maybe a facilitator, it depends, but we'll go through all of these items. And so just so you get kind of a view of what this looks like, and so that we could apply it to a real example. We've got this emergency management example here, but you've got your goals, which are public health and safety. You've got the strategies, which is emergency management. And then you've got the initiatives, which breaks down into the hazard mitigation plan, the continuity of operation plans, and then maybe some table talk exercises. And then from there, you've got very specific actionable items. And so each of our goals mirrors that, and the way that we've got it broken down further in the presentation. And so I mentioned this at the beginning, the goal of this review is really to determine whether or not the current plan is in alignment with the current council. And then these quotes are just, sort of, some, thoughts around, well, why we're doing this, really kind of looking at making sure that, we're getting the work of the city done that you want done. And so this is a little bit of an ugly slide, but I think it makes the point. We're doing a lot of work, and this is the vision that came forward as part of a prior process, but you can kind of see what's been important in the past, and what is really shaping our goals as we move forward. So these are our goals. So these are the things that we'll break out in the next slides, but improving community prosperity, providing responsible and engaged government, creating more housing, practicing good environmental stewardship, building and maintaining a sustainable environment, and then improving public health and safety. You'll also note that this looks kind of like a dashboard, because it is. It's part of our Envisio platform that we use, and is also part of the reporting materials that was included in the packet. So in summary, these are sort of the higher level goals and their prioritized strategies for how to address them. And so they're pretty high level, but they provide sort of the goal and a little bit of a definition around what we're going to do. And so I can go through each of these individually, but I'll move on to each goal. And so moving on to that, each of them is broken out here. So we've got improved community prosperity, and then you can see, what the goal is, and then what each of the individual strategies are, and what the initiatives are underneath those strategies. And so we can go through them one by one if you'd like. But the materials that were provided do provide an assessment of these items and where they are. Of note, just if you're looking for like a quick like Cliff Notes guide, the disruptions report is really helpful, I think, in determining the key initiatives that may have stalled out. And some of them actually, I was looking back through them, and we do owe you another report on that. And I think that you'll see that some of them have actually ticked forward in the next iteration. So keep moving on, unless if you want to take them one by one, or just I'll keep going.
Maybe go through at the goal level or at the strategy level.
Okay, I can do that.
Does it sound good to people? This is new to some of them.
Sure. So I'm just gonna maybe pause here and just take a look at this one, community prosperity, and then take a look at the strategies. And just make sure that they kind of make sense. And if they don't, maybe we can have a conversation about that.
Can't see it. I can see strategy 1.3 on my
see.
computer, but I don't see it up there.
Oh.
Maybe it's something about the projector.
It is. It's getting cut off on the bottom. With people in the room, we've got city staff in the room, so they have the report. And then so I think as long as people online are good with it, is that okay?
I think everyone online can see it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just go through the strategies real quick and just see if they make sense. So for this one, improve community prosperity. The first strategy is to actively support economic development and promote outdoor economic development. And so you've got the initiatives under that, where we're prioritizing recreation and parks as an economic driver, and then prioritizing revitalization and proceeding with Confluence Park.
This is number one, like as our priority.
Well,
the way this is
the strategy is sort of something that did, come to the top of the discussions for some of these items. And so I think looking at it in terms of actively support economic development and the promotion of outdoor economic development. So it's kind of a twofold. And then you've got the initiatives underneath it that are supporting that.
So let's just flag that.
I mean, when we developed this, though, it wasn't like this was the number one priority. Like I would view them all as like kind of, or the way I took it at least was like, it was like 6 equal, like infrastructure is just as important or more important than improving community prosperity. Like they were all standalone essentially. So I would not say like, just because they happen to be in this order, we could have reversed the order of any of them. So I wouldn't read too much into like the order that stuff is in versus just do the strategy still make sense.
So should we save our comments on the individual ones for discussion later?
Yeah. So we can get through the whole presentation.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lauren. So the next one, the strategy is to actively support the expansion of city provided childcare options. So I'm just going to focus on the strategies for right now, not get into the initiative pieces. And then the third here listed is to implement new economic development plans and supports. So those were the items that we identified to improve community prosperity. Moving on to the next one, to provide responsible and engaged government. So we said we would, in terms of strategies, communicate effectively. Hold on here. Increase accessibility, focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then increase city staff and council capacity. So the next one, to create more housing. We wanted to increase available housing units, meet emergency housing needs, and study the underlying housing barriers. And then under practice good environmental stewardship, we want to take a look at the promotion to promote conservation of river and water land resources, address climate change issues, and expand parkland. And then under build and maintain sustainable infrastructure, we wanted to address newer improved infrastructure needs, invest in and implement long-term Department of Public Works infrastructure plans, continue infrastructure funding strategies. And then this one's a little bit small, so sorry about that. Improving public health and safety. We wanted to address homelessness in the community, provide policing which fits Montpelier's needs and effective mental health, be disaster ready, and focus on public safety planning. And so this slide here gets beyond the goals, and this is so I'll maybe keep going with the rest of the presentation and then come back. This is the results of the national citizen survey that we did this past fall, which can kind of show you which items we scored lower than the benchmark on, which ones we scored higher. So lower being not as great, higher being good. And the items that are bolded are addressed within our strategic plan. So those are items that we're working on. And so, I mean, you can see that in the higher benchmark areas, you know, they're definitely representative of the work that the city council is doing, and it's pretty impressive, you know. But then on the lower side of things, there are some things of concern that we're working on, but also should be noted as we get into future cycles or within this one. So next steps, so this is pretty straightforward based on what we've been talking about. We need to determine whether to keep or amend the current plan, and then, you know, perhaps identify areas of future interest, and then just open it up to questions and discussions. And I can stop the share here, or I can put the slides back up in terms of just the individual items, or we can, it's up to you what you'd like to do from here.
Go ahead.
I suggest that we stop the share, take our break now, and then come back for discussion in 10 minutes.
People know the theater did warn us that they were going to be very noisy tonight.
For the people that do have
we have had the presentation on our strategic plan. So what would you like to do now? Do we feel that we're close enough to where we want to be that we can do some tweaking tonight and be done with it? Or do we feel that we want to have a much bigger and more in-depth discussion? Carrie.
All right, I'm gonna strongly advocate for not having a big in-depth discussion. I like strategic plans. I think this is a good one. I love the reporting that the staff does for us. It's very thorough. It's very helpful for me to be able to see where things are, and the disruptions report particularly is great to know why something didn't happen or why it's been slowed down. I think part of the point of having a strategic plan is so that we have a period of time set out where we have planned and we know what's going to happen. And so I'm not in favor of making any I'm not really in favor of making any amendments to it midstream, especially since within a few months we have coming up, presumably, our next strategic planning process. But I recognize that if this is a 2-year plan, that we have a lot of different people on the council. I wasn't part of creating this plan. Most of us weren't part of creating this plan. And so there are probably thoughts and opinions. I definitely have thoughts and opinions about things that if I could change it, I would, but I don't want to do it right now. And I'd rather we didn't. So I'm advocating for us not doing it right now. Maybe if there's some really big things that people want to flag right now that we can note so that when we get to this in a few months, we know these are the things that were really on our mind. But if we change it as we go along every few months, then it loses a lot of its value as a strategic plan. I'm not in favor of that.
Okay. Donna, you're just agreeing. Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, I was part of this plan, so it aligns with my priorities still. I do like Carrie's idea of, I would at least really appreciate knowing what, especially the new counselors, if there's big things that are not here that you're going to be putting forward. If we follow Carrie's recommendation of process, I just think it would be really valuable to understand like what the scope of the year might look like and what kind of like changes might be proposed, so that we can start wrapping our heads around the new counselors' priorities.
Mm-hmm. Tim.
Seems like, I mean, obviously the goals slide is terrific. And the next slide down with summary of goals and prioritized strategies all works for me. It seems like it's when we go to that next level of breakout, and this is a really long, precise, broken out, layered plan. There's pieces in there that it really falls apart for me, but I agree with Carrie. I think we've got to keep our priorities, and if we really want to accomplish the goals of what the voters voted us to do just a month or so ago, we've got to focus on infrastructure and helping the homeless problem and working on these key problems that are in front of us, and we are working on that. So I don't think we want to be distracted from that work. So I agree.
For instance, I noticed you had a reaction when you saw proceed with Confluence Park.
Oh my God.
And I know that that's one of our initiatives, but we've also already taken action to say, well, we're not putting any more city money into it. We are letting the proponents of this park go out and try to do some fundraising.
Okay.
But we're not actually doing it at this point. So it's on our list, but it's not something we're really doing.
It just needs to be way further down the list than it appears here for me.
Yeah,
But we have money in the pipeline, so we have to make a decision about that money, which we've put off for 18 months.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's also
Anybody else have any?
I pretty much concur with what Tim says. I'm great with the big picture stuff. I think some of the smaller, particularly in the improved community prosperity subsections, but I agree. I think we're we're addressing the things we need to address. We're spending our time where it should be. The issues that I'm most interested are all in here, so I'm okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? And you don't have to jump up and say anything. Let me just check. We've got a couple of people online. Paige Girton.
Hi, thank you. I guess economic prosperity is kind of a worn out phrase, and I feel like it really isn't terribly meaningful. I would love to see the council consider changing that to something along the lines of economic equity. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Linda Berger.
Thank you. I would just like the council to consider that in strategy 4.1, practice good environmental stewardship, conservation of air quality resources isn't included in that. And I think that I'd hope the council would consider air quality.
That was definitely not on our radar when we were talking about it last time. And so I'm sure that will be something we talk about next time. Okay, I think we're set. Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Next up, we have the Code of Conduct. And this is something as I think you all know, this is something that typically we just adopt without change or a lot of discussion at the initial organizational meeting after town meeting. And we passed over it last time because there was probably going to be some more discussion. What is your pleasure with this? You notice that there's a proposal from me to change the time limit for general business and appearances, and I don't know if there's enough support. I'm certainly not going to push it if my fellow members of the council do not support it, but I'll just point out that on occasion, there are specific comments that people have to make that 2 minutes isn't enough. And I know we ordinarily let people go to 3 or so. But the other part of the proposal that I have in mind is to manage the overall time of general business and appearances to ensure that it never is going to go beyond 30 minutes. And I think that that's another important part of it. And I would be happy to do what people want on this topic. Donna.
I have a couple of comments. And my understanding is we don't go at 2 minutes. We put the 1 minute up at 3 minutes. People are cut off at 4.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
that's
good to know.
been, and so I would love to have an actual automatic timer that we actually offer a table here and people come up, they have a place to put their papers. They push the starting button and they can see the time. And we really, if we say 2, we mean 2. But because I'm keeping time, the previous mayor, and I tried to explain to you, I get involved in the discussion. I can't guarantee I'm going to hit it at 2. So I feel more comfortable knowing I'm giving everybody 3 from when I do pick it up, so that everybody's always getting more than 2 minutes. But then, so I put the 1 minute up at 3, inevitably they go to, some of them go to the red. At that point, they're at 4 plus. And by the time they actually leave, most are at 5.
And it sounds like you'd like to be relieved
Whatever we
of
say,
that
let's do
burden.
it. So
Uh-huh.
if it is going to be two, let's be two. But it's going to be like, they do make buttons, automated things that you can sit there and the person, but then there's going to be a little beep. And when I tried to get the council before to allow me to have a beep, they didn't like it. So that's why we went to this. But if you had something that was automated, digital, they would see it and it would beep. And that's it. You're done.
And do they
But-
make it two-sided where they can see it and we can see it too?
You have to go Google it and find
Uh-huh.
out what kind of contraption you can make. But so that's one thing. I really would like it to be independent of the person and off of me or anyone else. And that to realize that if we do things at general appearances, there are councils such as our Montpelier Roxbury School Board. They only allow public comment at general public comments. They do not let the public comment on each individual item the way we do. Burlington City Council does the same thing. You only make public comments during the public comment. You do not make a comment unless it's a specific public hearing, which is a different type. And I do emphasize that our meetings are for us. It's the only time that more than 3 of us can talk. We can't even talk in the hallway if there's more than about anything we just talked about, if it's more than 3 of us. And I don't think people understand how confining that is. So the only time we hear one another is here. And we're giving so much time to the public throughout the meeting. I don't mind expanding this, but then I really want constraint elsewhere, unless it's a public hearing. So that's my 2 cents.
Helen, I think I saw your hand.
Don't know how to use this. So I just want to support her idea about taking it from an individual and having the clock. Most of the computers have their timer, so we don't have to buy or anything. If we arrange our computer and just put it on the screen, it will do it by itself. So that's yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah.
The fact that you already go to
Sally.
4 minutes and then most people take 5 argues for making the limit 5.
The ones I
think-
have to use the sign for, there are plenty of people who talk under 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But the ones who I end up having
Well,
to cut
well, I
off.
think we can encourage 2 and put the limit at 5. I wonder about the comments during the actual agenda items themselves. I mean, you're arguing for no public comments after the
Or not 5 minutes. Again, if you look at
a
our,
shorter period during that time. I just think it would be odd to be discussing something. I mean, when someone comes to the meeting, they don't know what our reaction to an issue is going to be until they hear it. They might have something they want to say before they hear us talk, but they may also have a response that I think it's worth our allowing them to make, and that might benefit us if we hear it. Even though I agree, we have so little time to spend discussing it as a group.
Carrie.
I think that the structure that we have now is pretty good. And sometimes it can go on for a very long time when the fact that we allow public comment on every agenda item. But I think on the whole, I've thought about this a lot, kind of weighing different ways to do it. I think on the whole, the fact that we err on the side of allowing more public comment opportunity is good. So I want to stick with that. And I think we do a pretty good job. I think we have a very good kind of process set out that can keep control of it so that we're not getting into like back and forth and discussion, because it's not a public discussion time. It's this is our meeting with public input. So I didn't realize that we were extending our time quite that much. I knew we were stretching the 2 minutes. 5 minutes feels like a really long time to me. I think if we make it 5 minutes, a lot of people will take 5 minutes who might otherwise be trying to rein themselves in. I do like the idea of limiting it all to 30 minutes. I think that's a great idea. It does require the mayor, whoever's facilitating the meeting, to get to know at the beginning how many people there are who want to speak and to do a little bit of math. And then we have to really keep very tight control over the time. So that could be logistically challenging, but I think it'd be worth a try. Wonder if we said 3 minutes and it was a real 3 minutes with a timer and of some kind. And then the mayor always has the discretion to allow somebody to talk longer if they need to.
Does that work for people? All right. Sold. Uh, let's see, I see one person with a hand up, Peter Kelman.
I'd like, the council to consider, if not this time, next time around, something which many, councils do around the country, which is a council conduct with the public in public meetings. It includes things like be welcoming to speakers and treat them with care and gentleness, be fair and equitable in allocating public hearing time to individual speakers, give the appearance of active listening, ask for clarification, but avoid debate and argument with the public, no personal attacks of any kind. These are ideas that govern the way the council treats people who come before them. And just to talk about one of them, this, and you can find these on the web. There's a lot of things like this. Speaking in front of council can be I'm just reading, can be a difficult experience for some people. Some issues the council undertakes may affect people's daily lives and homes. Some decisions are emotional. The way the council treats people during public hearings can do a lot to make them relax or to push their emotions to a higher level of intensity. I can tell you, I've talked to a lot of people who go before the council and they feel intimidated and they feel they're not being heard. They feel that people are looking down at their, whether this is fair or not, they feel people are looking down at their phones. And the fact that there isn't any interaction is problematic because, of course, you guys are not really supposed to interact, but there needs to be a way to be a little warmer about it. So I just hope you'll think about, if you're going to allow people to speak, to make them feel more comfortable about speaking. And by the way, let me just say this one last little thing, which is that hearings are too late for many people. By the time there's a hearing, people just don't believe that anything's going to change because of a hearing. They really do want to be able to make input well before the hearing. I think you should think about that, Donna. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So by unanimous consent, are we okay with changing the those two provisions of the rules of conduct, the time limit and the total time for general business and appearances?
I have another change I would like to suggest, but we could do them separately if that's a better way to handle it. Not to that section, but to a different section.
We good on that? Okay, great. And we'll have to figure out some technology, some device. Okay, Terry.
So I would like to, it's a B7, so it's under general rules and appropriate attire. And now, of course, I can't find it in here, but yeah. Okay, appropriate attire, including wearing shoes, pants, and shirts are required in the council chambers and other meeting rooms at all times. I don't think this is necessary. I think we could strike it. I think it sends a message of we do things in a certain way here, and we have to be very proper. And if you're going to come and be with us, you have to play by our rules, and you have to do things the right way, and you have to, behave yourself. And I don't think that's a message that we want to send or need to send. I think this is in general, we try to be pretty welcoming. There are lots of things we could do to be more welcoming, but this feels unnecessary to me. So I would propose that we get rid of it entirely.
Any objection to that? All right. I think we're good on that too.
Let's put it back in.
It's the whole time I've been on the council or coming to meetings, never seen anyone dressed in a way that would run afoul of this. Maybe no shoes, but right. Yes, Donna.
That one. I could add the use of seats. It talks about persons in the audience shall use the audience seats unless invited by the mayor or staff to sit at the presentation table or council seat. Now, sitting here, I deal with somebody who roams around and sits on that table, and it's very distracting. And I know part of it is my own dyslexic, that I really find that hard. Is there any way to, maybe people object to this, but is there any way to make suggestions to have people sit in their seats?
Hearing that now, I will, it's already a rule. I'm happy to say, to direct people to follow it.
Thank you.
I think that's a good point.
It doesn't bother you what he's doing, but doesn't it? Okay, good. Thank you. I
Oh,
appreciate
yeah,
that.
we've had people come up to stand behind city employees at the table and stuff like that. And I think you're right. That's a good point. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Are we ready to move on? Okay. Next up is another one of those things that we take up every year, and that is our group norms. And it's in the packet. And are people prepared to just adopt them, readopt them the way they are, or have any further discussion about them? And we adopted these several years ago, and I took the time last night again to read through this whole list again, and it's really a set of behavioral expectations that we have assumed on ourselves to have constructive engagement with each other. And so I think there's some real value to saying, yes, we adopt this. We think that we should hold ourselves to these standards. And I know there have been times where people have reminded each other or all of us of the value of following these norms. Donna.
I love if there's a council member or staff who are good wordsmiths to reduce the line items, but this came out of a rather dysfunctional council that went into retreat. It took a lot of time, and hence it's more lengthy, I think, than it needs to be. So anyway, so I'm looking for a good wordsmither to make suggestions, but I feel the essence of it is really great.
Yeah, anybody want to volunteer to take that on? Okay. Okay. Okay, so will we have it by next meeting?
Sure.
Good, because by next meeting, we either have a condensed version or we just adopt this one again. Anyone in the public have anything to comment on this? I don't see any hands up. Okay. We're up to other business. Don't have any other business. City council reports. Start at this end tonight. Lauren.
Nothing to report tonight. Thanks.
Same, nothing to report. Thank you.
I did attend first committee meetings since we started off, and the housing committee was interesting, and also the stormwater implementation committee. So as my learning curve expands, both of those were really good to be part of.
Great. Sal.
Likewise, I attended my first couple of committee meetings. I'm hoping, Donna, if you have anything to say about transportation infrastructure, that you will handle that. It was sort of new to me. Homelessness was the other one, and I think I've talked a little bit already about what went on with that meeting. I mean, the real focus now is handling the exit from the hotel program. So I think the committee's working pretty hard. The task force working pretty hard to figure out how to get something ready for that. So.
Harry.
Along the same lines, I attended my first meeting of the Social and Economic Justice Advisory Committee. And I think the relevant thing to report now is that they are actively recruiting new members. And so if anyone is interested in serving on that committee, they could reach out to any of the committee members, including myself, and I'd be happy to talk with them about it and encourage folks to apply.
Thanks.
The stormwater did meet, as Tim mentioned, and just give everyone a heads up. Not to anyone's surprise, we found within our city, we have silos and we have different systems for water, sewer, and we're going to add stormwater. So we have right now 2 different people entering information sort of in 2 different systems that don't speak to one another. And stormwater thought, oh, we can just blend into this system. Well, there's all these problems. But the good thing is, because we want the stormwater, the sewer, and the water bills to all be integrated and related to one another in one mailing, that we're going to come out of this ahead, but we're going to have to spend some money. And we're certainly going to have to dedicate staff time to it. We don't have to go to all new software, but we do have to do major modification. So it's typical story, right? You start here and new things happen and you stray a little bit. So that's the good news. You'll be seeing some pricing coming up, some rate will be presented to the council. I believe they're going to be in May. And likewise, on the infrastructure committee, we are going to do what we planned to do last summer, but because we ran into the problems with the railroad and getting our painter to do the striping, we were going to do a temporary lane, the shared lane on Berry Street. It's part of that study of Main and Berry scoping. So when you come into the Main Street intersection, you may have noticed there's now 2 crosswalks. It goes from one side of Main Street by the Parklet and the Shaw's, that little intersection. There's actually 2 crosswalks and they both have flashing lights. They were painted, but they're faded out, but those also are going to be repainted. And then when you get on the Berry side, there's going to be a shared path with bicyclists and walkers sharing the same space that then connects it to the rec building, to the youth shared path that goes way out to Bar Hill and by the dam. So that's going to happen. We did all this prep work last year and then it wasn't able to be put up. But there'll be new painting, new signs. We'll hope that people will really, pedestrians and bicyclists will share the space and enjoy it this summer. In 2024, it'll actually be constructed permanently. So.
Thanks, Donna. One of the things that I remember discussing when I was on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee was, and so this is a few years ago now, but we talked with Tom about the idea of getting like a temporary hardware for a roundabout at the Main Street and School Street intersection as a trial run for that converting that intersection to a roundabout, and that never happened. And has that come back into discussion at MTech?
Well, it's part of one of the intersections that's in the main Berry Street scoping is also other intersections in Maine. And that's there, but the resources dealing with the pandemic and where DPW has been, we've also been in partnership with Local Motion from Burlington. And so their schedule impacts it. They're helping us with this temporary that we're going to be doing this summer. So right now that's on the back burner, but we are hoping to do that because that is in the plan to turn that school and Maine into a roundabout.
Great. And you and I may have talked about this, but I've also for years been thinking that Bailey would be a good place for a roundabout. It's plenty wide enough, and
yeah, on
so I'd love to
non-peak
see
times,
that.
it really doesn't need cars sitting there idling. Yeah.
Yep. Great. Mayor's report. I have nothing to report, so I'll pass it to the clerk. City manager, acting city manager.
Thank you. Just a few things. So I wanted to just provide a just quick plug for the next item for Country Club Road. The next meeting will be May 24th, when they'll be coming to council to really talk about the results of their spring engagement. I also wanted to mention that the spring engagement phase dates will be coming out. We'll be meeting with the public again. The first date is April 29th. The second date is May 3rd, and the third date is May 8th. The structure will be very similar to what the winter engagement was. One will be at Country Club Road, one will be here in Chambers, and then one will just be on Zoom. So those dates will be coming out, and there's a nice graphic on the flyer that Evelyn has put together that really demonstrates sort of what has been happening with that process. Fall 2020 vision, winter 23 direction, spring 23 is sort of this first phase completion, and then we'll get sort of a master plan for decision in June. So just kind of laying that out there for you, so you know that those things are coming up. And then the other thing that I wanted to kind of put before you is something to consider in light of just all of the decisions that will need to be made around Country Club Road. If perhaps you might consider having a member sit in with staff on the internal process, if that's something you'd like to consider doing, so that then, you know, you get sort of a direct feed on the information being provided. So just something to consider. And then the next thing is kind of a thing that I don't get to do very often since I'm not usually sitting here. So I'm thankful to be doing it. This is the second full week in April, which is the National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. So I just wanted to send thanks out to Dispatch for all that they do in keeping us safe. So that's what I have for my items. Thanks.
One I just remembered, and Chief Nordenson, I just wanted to say thank you. I just was really grateful to see ongoing efforts at transparency, updates to the police department website. And really, we did a lot of work as a council and creating a public committee, a police review committee, a lot of recommendations, and a lot of a call for just greater transparency and accessibility. And so just really grateful to see that that work is continuing, even without that committee even existing anymore. So just thank you for that.
Okay. Without objection, we are adjourned at 9:02 p.m.